It was a year filled with change. The world shut down.
And businesses are still struggling to survive.
Schools switched to virtual learning.
And so many of our neighbors lost loved ones.
Even approaching a year, it still hurts, and it will always hurt.
Those who survived the virus are still feeling the effects.
Still going strong with my long haul symptoms.
But now there's a light at the end of the tunnel. People are getting the vaccine.
It's Christmas. It's like I'm really excited.
And now we can finally talk about what life looks like after the pandemic. In a year of uncertainty, one thing is certain: we are still in this together. Live from the nation's capital, the pandemic continues 1 year later. Good evening, I'm Leslie Foster. On this night exactly 1 year ago, our lives changed. I was here with you as Maryland Governor Larry Hogan announced the first COVID-19 cases in our area. This pandemic has brought us pain, loss, and uncertainty, but it has also brought us closer together. Tonight, we're looking at the next chapter, and we're answering your questions about life after the coronavirus right now on Facebook Live. Before we can talk about that, I need to take you back 1 year ago. The news at 11 begins with some breaking news about the new coronavirus. Maryland is reporting its first cases. 3 people living in Montgomery County have tested positive for the virus.
While today's news may seem overwhelming, this is not a reason to panic.
The district's first presumptive positive case.
This is the first case confirmed in Virginia.
I want everyone to hear me. Stay home.
We need to stay home. That's the most important thing that we can do right now.
He's going to be missed. I love you, Daddy. I love you.
They wanted to discuss end-of-life procedures. And so basically now I'm just left to make plans.
What has been fairly sobering is to observe how sick some of these patients are.
I wake up, I got the tube down my throat, I got the oxygen mask, and I don't know what's going on.
All right, let's go.
It's been a nightmare. In one shift, I pronounced 6 people dead.
I can't sustain the business if I don't have the revenue coming in. And what about my workers? What do I have to do?
We don't have big resources and money tucked away like, big businesses have.
Virtual learning is not equitable!
I want to go back to school.
Open up, Fairfax County.
I still think there is a reasonably good chance that by the very beginning of 2021, that if we're going to have a vaccine, that we will have it by then.
Just wear the damn masks.
Breaking news out of the White House. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for the coronavirus.
And now I'm immune, they tell me. I'm immune. I could come down and start kissing everybody.
I'm standing in a sea of 20,000 chairs. That 20,000, though, represents less than 10% of the American lives lost to COVID.
I have been through many public health crises before, but this is the toughest one we have ever faced as a nation.
We're all over this breaking news. The FDA just green-lighted Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine.
It's day 1 of vaccinations here at Winchester Medical Center. What did that moment mean?
It's emotional.
The parking lot of Six Flags America in Prince George's County transformed from a mass testing site into one of the state's first vaccination centers.
I need it, can't get it, and I'm afraid.
Today we mark a truly grim, heartbreaking milestone. 500,071 dead. We have to fight this together as one people, as the United States of America. That's the only way we're going to beat this virus, I promise you.
More than 500,000 people in this country have lost their lives to the virus. It's difficult to wrap our minds around that number. So let's put it in context. Nationals Park can fit more than 41,000 people. So imagine filling that venue almost 13 times. That is the number of lives lost in the U.S. to COVID. Okay, now let's focus on our area. More than 1,000 people have lost their lives in D.C., about 7,700 in Maryland, and more than 9,000 in Virginia. Combined, that is more than 18,000 people. That's almost twice the student population at Howard University, and it is more than the number of students at American University. The numbers are one thing, but in order to really understand the gravity of this pandemic, we have to talk about the people. Many of our friends and neighbors have lost someone to this virus. They were mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers. These names you see here are just some of the people in our community who died from COVID-19. I want to introduce you to one woman. She lost 3 family members to the virus, and as Jess Arnold found out, that pain is still very raw.
Shantae Leek Cherry has 3 graves to visit now because of COVID.
It's going on 1 year and the pain still exists.
The virus took her sister Nikki at the beginning of April 2020. 2 weeks later, her brother John died. And within days, her mom Leslie had succumbed too.
You just couldn't get a break. It was just overwhelming.
How she feels when she visits her parents' home in Southeast DC, her family's go-to gathering place.
It's like a void. When I come here, it's emotional. And most of the time I avoid coming here because it's just not the same.
But the memories linger.
My mom was love, and she exemplified that with everybody that she came in contact with. My sister Nikki, she was life. She was the life of the family, the life of every party. My brother John, he was, I would say, the clown. He was a jokester. One thing we did, we lived, we loved, we laughed.
And they sang.
Is there one in particular you always sang together?
My sister Nikki, she loved, oh Lord, how excellent. Oh Lord, how excellent.
Praising what got Shantae through the last year, her faith.
And just having that spiritual foundation is really what's keeping me afloat.
Left now with a mere marker of the family she holds so dear, she urges everyone to remember the pandemic isn't over.
At this point, life is just different, and we just have to do what we can.
One thing we can do from a distance, she says.
Love on your family, because you just don't know.
Jess Arnold, WUSA9.
Some people who survive COVID are dealing with the symptoms months after contracting the virus. We're talking fatigue and shortness of breath, brain fog. Doctors aren't sure why that's happening. Gabe Cohen and the Verify team went straight to the experts to get some answers.
Micheline Carlton was an avid runner.
Hey everybody, just wanted to give you an update.
Now she struggles to just get off the couch.
Still going strong with my long haul symptoms.
Still suffering nearly a year after contracting COVID.
My everyday life has completely changed.
So let's verify. Are COVID patients suffering long-term effects? Our sources, 3 COVID doctors and 1 patient.
Many patients are seeing long-term effects of COVID right now.
Dr. David Petrino runs a COVID rehab program at Mount Sinai, New York. He estimates 10% of all COVID patients are developing a mysterious condition he calls post-acute COVID syndrome.
Those patients, known as long haulers, often recover quickly from the virus itself, but face new severe symptoms weeks or months later.
It is a really debilitating syndrome that has a number of persistent symptoms.
Extreme fatigue, racing heart rate, shortness of breath, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, and many more.
Last few days I've been pretty much in bed with a headache.
When Micheline got COVID last March, her symptoms were mild. A month later, her health declined. The 47-year-old is still out of work with constant headaches and fatigue. Her heart races when she stands up.
I can see the emotion in your eyes.
I'm the mom. I'm supposed to take care of my children. I'm supposed to protect them. I'm supposed to make their lives better. And I feel like I can't do that.
Straighten your arms out overhead and straighten out your legs.
She's now in physical therapy and on medication. One of dozens of long haulers Dr. Tae Chung is treating at Johns Hopkins.
What are the main treatments you're using?
We try aggressive hydration and specific forms of physical exercises along with some drug treatments.
People are still not feeling where they were before COVID.
Do we know what's causing this?
Well, no, that's what we're trying to get at.
Dr. Walter Koroshetz is the director of the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke at the National Institutes of Health. He thinks the immune system is the likely culprit here.
Anything that activates your immune system is going to cause a lot of these symptoms.
You think this may be a new condition that no one's ever seen?
That's correct.
Dr. Petrino believes the immune response to COVID may be disrupting the autonomic nervous system, the part you can't control that regulates your heartbeat, organ function, and more.
It's been knocked out of balance by the severe systemic trauma that they experienced when they got ill.
Congress has already approved more than $1 billion for the NIH to study long COVID.
What's your biggest concern?
That there may be people who, instead of getting better and better and better over time, even though it's slow, that they hit a plateau and they don't get better anymore.
There's an increasing evidence and suspicion that this long COVID syndrome, some of them may have it as an autoimmune condition. Forever.
It's something that truly is frightening.
With your Verify, I'm Gabe Cohen.
There is a giant ray of hope in all of this, and that is the coronavirus vaccine. There are 3 versions available right now, Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. So give me the next 30 seconds to throw some numbers at you. About 44,000 people in D.C. have been fully vaccinated, Maryland about 500,000, and in Virginia about 740,000 people have both doses. Now we still have a long way to go, and the rollout hasn't always been smooth. I mean, look at this. Long lines, long wait times, and a lot of frustration. And trust me, we hear you, we know. I want to introduce you to one Maryland woman who finally had success. Ms. Hattie Blackwell. She desperately needed that life-saving shot. And like so many of you, she wasn't getting anywhere. So she asked us for help. And here's Bruce LeShan.
Hello, how you doing?
Good morning. Thank you.
Hattie Blackwell and her granddaughter have been trying for weeks to get her an appointment for the COVID vaccine.
That's my soul right there.
We are best friends. We've been best friends forever.
COVID has already put the 71-year-old Hyattsville woman in the hospital for 8 days.
I think I cried every day. She was in the hospital.
Months later, Hattie is still on oxygen. She has heart disease, Crohn's disease, high blood pressure, and cancer.
So the last thing you want to do is get it again.
She's desperate for the vaccine.
I need it, can't get it, and I'm afraid for myself.
What I want you guys to do is call the phone number 855-634-6829. It may say on the recording that there are no appointments, but if you ask to speak to a real person, people are getting appointments.
You have reached the Maryland Go Vax COVID-19 Vaccination Support Center.
When they get a real person, some of them are getting appointments.
At this time, all mass vaccination appointments have been reserved.
Continue to an agent?
Yep, continue to an agent.
That's him?
An operator called back within minutes.
She's 71 years old. She has a lot of underlying issues, and we really need her to get this vaccine.
No appointments that day.
She's giving me hope.
She's finally getting her vaccine today.
But a few days later, she gets one and her first jab at a Walgreens in Chevrolet.
Relieved.
So excited for you.
Thank you.
My baby finally got her shot.
Hattie's granddaughter Tatiana texted Bruce those videos. She said she couldn't have done this without him. We are so happy to help. There is, of course, a lot of confusion over who is eligible to get the vaccine. Keep in mind, every jurisdiction is doing things a little differently. If you want to see if you are eligible, go to WUSA9.com or download our free WUSA9 app. Right now, children are not getting the vaccine in D.C., Maryland, or Virginia, and parents, we all want to know when this is going to happen. So our Verify team took that question to the experts, and they tell us right now vaccine trials for children are underway. They're similar to the adult trials. Researchers collect 2 months of data after the second shots are done, and then they can ask the FDA for authorization. But that's really only for kids 12 and under. Trials for children who are 5 to 11, well, those should start later this year. Children who are even younger might need modified vaccines. We'll be answering your coronavirus vaccine questions throughout this show, but I want to tell you about another great resource. Right now on WUSA9.com, you'll find our free vaccine guide. It has information about how to register and who is eligible for the vaccine. Oh, and check this out. You see that QR code at the bottom of the screen? Take out your phone, open up the camera, and hold it over that code. That will also take you to our vaccine guide. We'll leave the code up throughout this show.
We know this time is so confusing right now, and there's so much information out there about COVID-19, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. Well, right now, our experts are on the WUSA9 Facebook page answering those questions in real time. Like this one, asking if pregnant women should get the vaccine, if it's safe for them. Well, our experts just answered this question a few minutes ago, and they said yes. In fact, some people that are first responders actually were some of the first pregnant people to receive the vaccine. So right now, as far as they know, things are safe. I'm going to check back in with you guys maybe a little bit later. If not, check us out on our Facebook page right now and ask your question to our experts.
That's a fantastic thing to do. The experts are there to answer your questions. Adian, thank you. One of the most disturbing parts of this pandemic is how it is impacting our Black and brown neighbors. Larry Miller takes a closer look at the intersection of race, equity, and access when it comes to the coronavirus.
Monique Stevens lives in District Heights. She and her family want the vaccine.
When you hear the national news, they're saying, African Americans are not taking the vaccine. Why? For this particular case, we're not able to register.
When we spoke with Stevens last month, she told us she'd been working for more than 5 weeks to get an appointment for her husband, a kidney transplant recipient, and her 2 other family members.
I use my laptop, I use my cell phone, and I use my husband's phone because I wanted to get the 3 of them registered. I sat there for 30 minutes in a virtual waiting room. And after the 30 minutes was up, sorry, no more vaccines available.
After another 2 weeks of waiting, she was finally able to get her family a vaccine appointment for March the 10th. Vaccines are hard to come by for communities of color. Data from the CDC shows Maryland ranks 45th in the country on the percent of distributed vaccines administered. And look at this. Data from the state shows Prince George's County was slated to receive 4,200 doses of the Moderna vaccine this week, while Baltimore County was slated for 4,900 doses. Prince George's County has a larger overall population and more African Americans, but received fewer doses of the vaccine. In D.C., nearly 14,000 African Americans have received either one or both shots of the COVID vaccine, compared to more than 17,000 white residents. In Virginia, white residents lead the state in vaccinations.
It's kind of like 2 things going on simultaneously.
Dr. Reed Tuckson is the co-founder of the Black Coalition Against COVID-19 and DC's former commissioner of public health.
As more and more African Americans become excited about getting vaccinated and want to be vaccinated, now we're facing the roadblocks and the barriers to being able to actually receive it.
The group focuses on educating the African American community on COVID-19, the risks, and the vaccine. He says it's working.
We have watched over the last several months, going from our polling, which said that 60% of our audience, a national audience, said no to the vaccine. And now that's down to 27%.
So it boils down to this. African Americans, like other groups, are fighting to get their hands on the vaccine, but there are issues with availability and the process to register for an appointment. It's not just one issue. It's the culmination of several issues that's contributing to this documented disparity, Leslie.
Yeah, this is clearly a priority for lawmakers, and it should be. Larry Miller, thank you.
Thank you.
One more note on this. Yesterday, Maryland launched a vaccine equity task force. The governor says this will help some of our most vulnerable neighbors get those life-saving shots. Masks and face coverings are a big role in keeping this virus from spreading. They're playing a big role, and the experts recommended them pretty early in the pandemic. Doctors, scientists, and local leaders are not messing around when it comes to this safety precaution.
Just
wear the damn masks.
We've heard Maryland Governor Larry Hogan say that over and over, and a lot of you want to know how much longer you will have to wear your mask. Well, our Verify researchers went straight to the top to get some answers. Our source for this, Dr. John Brooks, an epidemiologist at the CDC. Here's what he had to say when we asked that question.
Part of that is going to depend on when we get a high enough level of population immunity that the virus just can't propagate itself, that anytime it tries to get into another person, it comes to a dead end, either because that person's vaccinated or they've already had a natural infection which is protecting them.
Dr. Brooks says when we get to that point, we can start to relax some of these measures. He's talking about herd immunity, and it's really difficult to say exactly when we'll get to that point. A Johns Hopkins University professor made headlines after he wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal claiming we'd reach herd immunity by April. So is that true? We talked with 4 infectious disease experts, and here's what they had to say.
Do you think we could reach herd immunity by April?
April is very optimistic.
I think there is no chance we will have herd immunity by April.
It's unlikely. No, it's not possible.
Okay, so it's unlikely April will happen, but I want to bring Dr. Anthony Fauci into this conversation. He's got some good context about what it will take to get us to herd immunity.
If you get an umbrella of herd immunity over the country where, we don't know what that number is. It's somewhere in the range of 70 to 85%. We don't know at this point what that is, but somewhere at that higher level, that I believe that we can start to approaching a degree of normality. And to me, that would mean what you're referring to. That would mean really children safely back in school, being able to go to a theater, being able to go to indoor dining.
Okay, so here's the bottom line. Keep wearing your mask, keep keeping your distance, and do your part by getting the vaccine. This pandemic hit businesses hard. Many had to close their doors for good. People lost their jobs, and now they're struggling to make ends meet. I want to zero in on one family-owned business in D.C. They've experienced all the ups and downs of this pandemic, and while they've struggled to stay open at times, they are grateful for where they are now. I'll let Jess Arnold take it from here.
The Lees have been building bouquets in D.C. since 1945.
You don't see a lot of 76-year-old businesses, and we're also grateful to be a Black-owned business in these times,
Then the pandemic hit in March, threatening to strip away 3 generations of work.
Well, when it first hit, nobody knew what was going to happen. It was like a ton of bricks falling on your head.
Did it ever cross your mind that you might have to close down?
Yes, it did. It was devastating, and it was just like a halt to the business.
Christy Lee Jones' sister and co-owner Stacy says they had to lay off 80% of their staff.
We only had about 6 or 7, 9, 10 deliveries a day.
But come May, a business bloom. Those deliveries gradually growing to more than 50 daily.
Since then, we've had to hire more people to keep up with the volume. That's such a blessing.
With a bittersweet hue.
Yeah, a lot of the orders have been for funeral services, and a lot of them have passed of COVID.
The Lees know they've been lucky, unlike others. A Harvard-led economy tracker reported a near 44% drop in open D.C. businesses as of February.
Now that we have the vaccine, it's getting put out in the community, people are finally getting to start looking ahead. So, what does the future look like for Lee's Flowers?
Well, it looks good.
More cleaning, more disinfecting.
People can come only about, 5, 10 feet into the store.
How may I help you today?
I feel better energy coming.
Lee's Flower Shop, flourishing. On U Street, Jess Arnold, WUSA9.
Parents, this past year has been a roller coaster, but I want to give a shout out to all the teachers out there. Oh my goodness, they are a shining light in all of this. And the teacher we're about to show you is going above and beyond to help her kids. Here's Evan Kozlov.
Iker, wow, check you out.
Even in a pandemic, through a computer screen.
Hey, you did a fantastic job on that, buddy.
You get those special kindergarten moments in the class of Miss Norris, first name Margaret, who's a teacher at Arcola Elementary School in Wheaton.
Iker, what letter do you want for a sticker? Because you definitely earned a sticker with that one. I want
But no doubt, corralling a group of 5- and 6-year-olds over Zoom presents some challenges.
You need to be looking at your screen. First of all, we are respectful. We look right at our screen.
Ms. Norris says that it's definitely been a unique year.
The adults in the room will be on their Zoom or getting their child set up, or their baby's crying, and then you have the kindergartner with their earphone on, and then right next to them is the third grader. So we hear each other's background noises. I hear other teachers teach all day long. 0, very good.
But amid the home learning madness, Ms. Norris has given herself a second job. A few times per week, she hops in her car and drives to pick up food, produce from here at the Manna Food Center. She also spends thousands of dollars at the grocery store, using money raised by friends, family, and just members of the community. The food is then given out here at the community center at the Pembroke Square Apartments in Silver Spring. On average, about 116 bags of food per week.
We don't want anyone in our community to tell a child, you have to go to bed without eating. You have to wait till tomorrow because we don't have any food in the house. So we do this for kids, so kids can eat. Great job, everybody give Iker a hand.
With the pickup over, Miss Norris was back at the computer screen at home. With the big things and the little things, everything she does is for these kids. In Montgomery County, I'm Evan Kozloff, WUSA9.
And just a reminder right now on our WUSA9 Facebook, a few experts are answering your questions about the coronavirus and the vaccine. This is a great resource you don't want to miss out. So if you've got a question, drop it in the chat. I'll end our time tonight with an exchange I had this week. I met a woman who plans to put off getting the COVID vaccine. She told me she'd been in close quarters with several people who contracted the virus, but she was spared. So in her mind, she wouldn't need one of those coveted shots in the arm. Imagine if more than 500,000 of our fellow Americans had had access to those shots before they took their last breaths. Life is truly so very fragile. Much in the way a doctor takes the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, and a police officer pledges to protect and serve the community, this vaccine is the way that we've all been called up from where we are into service. The path forward has always been bigger than one person. And now in this pandemic, when we roll up our sleeves, we are doing the work to preserve humanity for generations to come. When we started this program, we talked about how we are all in this together. 1 year later, we still are. We'll rise, fall, or emerge victorious with a shot, or maybe two. And perhaps many more of us will get to live through this together.